Your entertainment choices, offer them up. Your offense and bitterness, put that on there too while you're at it. Your right to be offended, that goes. Your worries and your fears, your anxieties, you just put it all on there. God, I'm offering all that I am to you. You know what else goes on there? Is like that thing that you're thinking of that you're hoping I won't use as an example. Yeah, that too. Like that goes on there. That goes on there too. It all goes on there. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, and then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is. It's good, perfect, and pleasing will. When my kids were younger, my wife received as a Christmas gift from someone that we'll go and mention a set of cookie molds, Christmas cookie molds, you know? And she got them on like Christmas Day or maybe the day before Christmas. So they weren't super helpful that year, but they went into, storage within the kitchen, deep in some cabinet. And then the following year, as we were getting closer to the Christmas season, my wife and kids decided they were gonna make some Christmas cookie, get into the spirit of things by making some Christmas cookies for neighbors and then for some local residents of a nursing home. I didn't know that they were doing this, but I came home and there were dozens of cookies out on the island, all of them using this cookie mold that was given to us. Some of you don't know what that is. Some of you are pretending like you don't know what that is. Well, that's a marijuana leaf. Somebody gave us Christmas cookies molds that were actually marijuana leaves. So I almost became the pastor who handed out marijuana Christmas cookies to neighbors and nursing home residents. And so I walk in and I see this, and I'm just like, I'm picturing the news. Like the cameras outside the nursing home, local pastor gives out marijuana cookies. So like I picture, and I would say, I know what I would say. I'd say, hey, we didn't mean to, right? Like it wasn't intentional. Somebody just handed us the mold. Somebody just gave us the mold. And that's kind of the image here of Romans chapter 12, not of marijuana. Well, maybe marijuana-shaped cookies, but it's this image of a mold being handed to you that you're letting shape your life without even realizing it. Without even thinking, you don't even know what you're doing. You're just going along with it because somebody handed it to you, and now it's shaped so much of who you are. The word conform here means to form according to a mold. Don't let your life be formed according to a mold. J.B. Phillips says, don't let the world around you squeeze you into its mold. So Paul says, pay attention, please. My heartfelt plea for you, I urge you, don't just let your life be squeezed into the mold of the world around you without thinking about it. Don't do that. He says, do not be conformed. And that's in the present imperative verb tense, meaning stop doing what you're already doing. So he's saying to this church in Rome, you don't even know it. It's already happening to you. You're already being squeezed. That mold is already beginning to shape you in ways that you don't realize. Don't do that. Don't be conformed to the pattern of this world. Proverbs 4:23 tells us how we are shaped, how we are molded. It says, be careful how you think. Your life is shaped by your thoughts. Your life is molded by the way you think about things, by the thoughts you think. Dr. Caroline Leaf is a neuroscientist who is essentially a brain expert who studies how our lives are shaped by our thoughts. And she says the average person has more than, whether they know it or not, they have more than 30,000 thoughts per day. Up to 60,000 thoughts per day. It's a lot of thoughts per day. But for most of us, we're not even really that aware of what thoughts we're thinking. They just kind of come to us as they come to us. But she makes the case that it just affects like every part of who you are. Like it has a way of establishing your emotions and determining your decisions and regulating your relationships. It even affects you physically. Your thoughts affect your physical body. One of the things she talks about are studies that point to the fact that the majority of the illnesses that plague us today are a direct result of thoughts we think. Some experts, such as Dr. Fred Luskin of Stanford University, estimate that approximately 90% of our thoughts are repetitive thoughts, meaning they're thoughts we don't think about. We start thinking a certain way, we start thinking certain thoughts, and then continue to think the thoughts we've been thinking without thinking about those thoughts. Like, that's just how 90% of our thoughts go. And so in 2 Corinthians 10, Paul, in a very much a parallel passage to Romans chapter 12, Paul talks to us about these strongholds, these thoughts that have a strong hold on our lives. And he says, the way that you defeat these strongholds, these things about you that you need to have changed, or these parts about you you want to be different, or these relationships that need to go in a different direction, the way you break these strongholds, he says, is you take every thought captive. That's the language that he uses. You take every thought captive and you submit it to Christ. And so the point he makes here is you take your thoughts captive, or your thoughts will take you captive. Like, that's how that works. You take your thoughts captive, or your thoughts will take you captive. So how do we do that? In order to not be shaped and molded by this world, we have to seize our thoughts. We interrogate them. We capture them, we interrogate them, ask certain questions of them. Is this thought true? Is this thought biblical? Is this thought, Philippians chapter 4, good and praiseworthy? Lovely? Is this thought God honoring? We interrogate it and we submit it to Jesus. A number of years ago, I sat down with a group of men at a conference, and we shared some of the thoughts that had shaped our lives as men, thoughts that we had before we could remember having them, molds that had been handed down to us and had shaped our lives in ways that we did not want or intend, just strongholds that got a grip. And so Joe in that group said the thought that had shaped his life was it wasn't okay to be sad. Like, Joe grew up in a home where the expectation was to be happy, like all the time, no matter what. Being sad was for weak people, and as a man, he struggles with loneliness because when he's sad, he's ashamed and he won't share it, and he deals with anger issues because his life had been shaped by this thought. It's not okay to get sad, but it's okay to get mad. Doesn't remember ever intentionally thinking it, but that thought has shaped his life. And Mike said that the thought that had shaped his life in many ways was that he thought of women as objects, and his parents divorced when he was 6, and he'd stay at his dad's house, and his dad kept a collection of porn magazines, easy access for him, and he was hooked. And every attractive woman he met, he would send down that same neural pathway. And he got married and he hoped things would change, but that stronghold had a stronghold, and he and his wife just fought. And he saw his wife as an object to satisfy him, and he put pressure, and he was demanding, and they were divorced 3 years later. Scott said, I thought my worth was determined by how much money I made, and so he grew up just thinking, doesn't really know when it started, doesn't ever remember purposely saying it to himself, but he just grew up thinking that success in life was determined by like how nice his house was and what kind of job he had, how much money he made, and he was just surrounded by examples that reinforced that thinking, and he let that thought literally determine every major decision in his life. It wasn't thoughts about legacy or eternity or the kingdom of God. It was, how much am I worth? When it was my turn to share, I said one of the thoughts that has been a stronghold in my life, I've shared this with you before, is just this thought that I had from the time I can remember that nobody ever said to me, but somehow I just thought it, and I kept thinking it. And it went like this: it's not okay to ask for help. It's okay to help people, but it's not okay to need help from people. And I thought that in humbling myself and asking for help, I thought I was admitting failure. I thought I was supposed to be a rescuer, and there's something embarrassing about needing to be rescued. And that all worked out okay. Like those thoughts seemed to work for me until I needed help. And so this past week, my wife and I celebrated our 29th wedding anniversary, 29 years of marriage. And we were sitting across the table from each other.